All right, man. Here we go. Another show.
Here we go. And first, I just want to say thanks, Pat. I think you covered a little bit while I was out for a few days taking a little R&R. So
Happy to do it.
thanks for
Happy to
doing
do
a
it.
solo show out there.
Easy day, man. We got a good topic to talk about today. But before we get into it, I'll do the housekeeping and get it out of the way. Everybody out there, check out variednotrandom.com. We offer a bunch of different cycles that help you hopefully advance your fitness. There's on-ramp programs for barbell, dumbbell, and body weight. There's a whole bunch of ones under the category of get your first, whether it's strict pull-up, a bar muscle up, a toes to bar, handstand walk. Check those out. There's some just straight up get strong barbell capacity programs as well, and some good old engine stuff. 1.5 mile run, a 12-week run bike row program. So check all that out. On the gym owner side of the house, gym owners, you've got to take care of workout tracking, gym management, and billing. And now btwb has an all-in-one that takes care of all of those things. Same software, same platform, all seamlessly integrated. So if you are a gym owner interested in the all-in-one, go to btwb.com. And I will also say, if you are a gym out there currently using the all-in-one, I want to talk to you. I'm trying to interview as many of those gym owners as I possibly can. There's a bunch we've put on the btwb website. But if you've been using the all-in-one for a while and you want to brag about why your gym is the coolest gym in the world, and then we'll chat a bit about the software as well, shoot me an email. What is my email? It'll be on the whiteboard. It's pat.sherwood@btwb.com, and I'll get it, and then we'll make it happen. So, okay, here we go. First of all, I don't know what I did to my right heel. I stepped in a rock
Heel.
or something. My heel, I'm limping
Huh.
like something like I was walking around barefoot and stepped on something sharp. I've got no puncture, no nothing, but I'm limping around, and we just got invited to like my wife and I play in a couples pickleball tournament in like a week. So I got a time crunch to get this foot back to fully
Nah,
operational
you'll be fine,
status.
man. It's 4 foot only for that kind of athletic endeavor. You'll be fine.
Oh
On the
man,
attack, Pat. Come on.
what's what's terrible? I'll have to let everybody know candidly how it goes. I'm not a ball sport athlete, I'm a blunt force, slow dumb animal. So I don't think my wife and I are going to do well, and nobody could tell if I had a foot injury or was
She could carry
doing
the
good.
team. Don't put that on her. You don't
She's
know
gonna
that.
have to. She's gonna have to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start taking a lot of performance enhancing drugs this next week
Mm.
just so I can crush it.
Yeah,
Okay,
man. An important aspect of the team is like being the eye candy. So you could be
there
that.
you go.
Just look
Listen,
at the intimidation factor.
I'll be out
It's
there in head to toe lycra. Okay,
yeah.
here we go. Here's the question that you dug up, I think, from posted on one of the YouTube videos that we put out there.
Yep. From a recent episode. Yep.
It says, "Hey guys, I listened to the show on podcast and enjoy you guys debating various aspects of the fitness world. Here's something I would like you to consider for a show: how to best measure who is fittest. I know you have talked about this before, and when listening to it, I started thinking that maybe if there was some way to measure watts, for example, in everything, endurance sports, martial arts, strongman, or weightlifting, and so on, wouldn't that be a good way to determine who is the fittest on earth? I've been thinking about I've been thinking that if you could measure the total energy produced in a set time, that would be a pretty accurate thing. How do you think CrossFit would stack up against other sports in watts measurement?" Hopefully, I got my thoughts right. So basically, we've got a way that we determine fitness and who is fitter. And should we stray away from that and go down to some sort of, whether it's watts or joules or horsepower or something else, and measure that and divvy out the medals based upon that?
Yeah. I think it's a great question and fun to bat around this sort of thing. I immediately start to see a split between theoretically, let's just say you could have this measurement that was universally applicable and could be done in some sort of meaningful way, which we'll get to that in a second. I think that that's a bit of a leap anyway. But let's say you had that. I immediately think about what is omitted from that line of thinking, and that is task accomplishment. And so to me, I find that it's always kind of this weird intellectual split when people start talking about fitness as an absolute quality with a measurement outside of like getting the thing done.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, I think you can make a valid argument if you had this ability to measure that certain body types for certain things are going to be able to accomplish a task more efficiently and therefore use less fitness to do it. But that kind of doesn't matter. What matters is like, can the thing be done in real life? Because
Mm-hmm.
if you can't apply your fitness to something, what good is it anyway? And to me, that practicality has to be a cornerstone of the conversation. So for that reason, I think that you kind of have to, if you're going to tread down this path of intellectualizing over like who the fittest could be if we had this way to measure it, you also have to consider the other side of the coin that is like, yeah, but in the real world, we also have to do things. And that ultimately should trump whatever output as a secondary measurement that you choose to focus on. That was a little jumbly, but hopefully I got my point across there.
Yeah, I've got some simple bullet points to hit in a
Yeah,
second, but giving it, I would say, if we were to go down to like the watts, joules, whatever it happened to be,
sure.
path, which this has reared its head in different ways before, right? And it maybe it's not just in testing, but I'll see people sometimes get wrapped around this into, okay, well, if intensity drives results, then I should only program in ways that maximize my intensity. And like, well, if that was the
Hmm.
case, we'd only do like 1 minute intervals of air squats and darn near nothing else. Like there are some things that you just are such high power producing things, but you don't want to do those at the exclusion of everything else. And while it's,
Sure.
intensity does drive results and that's extraordinarily useful and accurate, that doesn't mean that there's not more to the discussion to produce this well-rounded athlete that that you want. And I
Yeah.
think that
Well, and I was going to say that I think it's easy to reduce things on paper to that kind of like, well, how much wattage, for example, is being put out, but it doesn't. It kind of discounts the physiology required for different activities because there are different blends of properties that you're going to have to call on for, say, a 5K run versus a one rep max lift. And so, yeah, I guess wattage in both of those instances could be telling to some degree, but it's not really going to give you a sense of why an athlete can do the things that they do or why they can't when you boil it down to like a single focal point, if that makes sense.
and while I had my biases, I went to the all-knowing alien AI and asked
Mm,
them this question and to give me both sides of it. And so the
mm,
first one was measuring fitness or athletic prowess and ability using energy-based metrics. And they gave a few pros and a few cons.
mm,
The pros were it's quantifiable and objective. It's comparability across contexts. Um, it says, for instance, watts generated by a cyclist could be compared to watts generated by a rower. It's a common language for energy output. It could give you detailed performance insights as to how efficiently an athlete uses energy, which could highlight strengths and weaknesses, blah, blah, blah. For example, two runners finish a race, but then you can, dive into all their energy expenditure. Those are the pros. The cons of using energy-based metrics are complexity and accessibility of measuring um, said units,
mhm.
context dependent, and this I love this one as one of the cons, and you touched on it. Energy metrics don't always translate directly to performance outcomes. So, for
Yes.
example, a cyclist with a higher wattage might lose a race due to either poor
Yeah.
aerodynamics or bad strategy, making the metric less relevant in some contexts. And the
Or they're a
other
heavier athlete and they just have to create more wattage
hun-
to keep the same
100%.
pace.
And the other con was limited scope. So, for example, these metrics focus on energy output, but may not capture other critical factors like technique, mental toughness, sports specific skills, for example, a sprinter's starting block efficiency,
Mhm.
amongst others. So, those are some of the pros it gave to energy based metrics and some of the cons. But I think the biggest con
Yeah.
was that energy metrics don't always translate directly to performance outcomes. If I had to
Yep.
highlight one, I think that's like the crown jewel.
Absolutely. And that's what I was trying to get at with that rooted in reality jag I was on earlier. And I stand by that. And I think that most people intuitively, if they were to see that, And when they're presented with that, they would also agree. So, for example, you have this athlete, he won the race, but then in the aftermath of that, it comes out that his competitor, let's say Boz wins the race and Pat on paper produced more wattage. And then later on, the headline is Pat Sherwood wins race via metric, whatever
Right,
that
right,
metric
right.
was.
Yeah.
I don't think people are going to accept that too much. I mean, the purist, and there may be some pedants out there that are like, well, yeah, but technically he was producing more. And so therefore I agree that he won. But the average person, and I think those that are rooted in outcomes that actually matter, there's going to be no argument that it's like, yeah, but the other guy got across the line faster. It's pretty hard to argue at that point.
Uh,
And so that's the danger of kind of reducing things down to a single metric like that.
you've given an example before, which I've used and stolen, hopefully given you credit for before, which is something like basically how focusing on the outcome is what matters and not the metric. So, for example,
Mm.
two people run the marathon, and person A is faster than person B. Do you care who had a better VO2 max? You care who
Right.
won,
Yep.
and if all that mattered was the VO2 max, and everybody would line up, we wouldn't have to do the
Yeah.
race.
Why
We'd
run the
measure
race?
everybody's VO2 max and hand out your placing based upon that. But what matters in the real world is who gets across the finish line first, that task accomplishment at the end of the day. And I think that example in my mind is just very nice, very
Yep.
clear, and kind of sums it up. And that task accomplishment, work capacity across broad time modal domains, from short to medium to long time domains, from no load to light to moderate to heavy to everything in between, with as many intentional ways that we can vary it to have a broad outcome. I have to credit where credit is due. I think Greg absolutely nailed it in saying that real world task accomplishment and doing work quickly is what we should strive to get better at, and the metrics will get dragged along as we focus on work capacity.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think it all boils down to his original question that he posed, decades ago at this point, which is like, well, what does it mean to be fit?
Mm-hmm.
Let's really try to pin that down. Is it the fastest person in the room? Is it the person with the biggest strength, on record? Is it the person that has the greatest flexibility and can do the splits? Is it some combination of these things? And I think it's that original question that really led to so much of the development of what CrossFit is. And I think it's still vitally important, and he started that thought exploration with this kind of general statement that recognizing fitness as a quality that lends itself generally well to anything that you want to pursue physically. Okay, but that's still too broad. So how do we get a little closer to what fitness is? And eventually you get to these different models that are explained in that great article, What is Fitness? You can still go back
Mm-hmm.
and find in the archives. It's the genesis of a lot of the level one CrossFit course material, which is excellent. If you haven't been, you know, dosed with that, you should. But I think the most relevant one that it really kind of came out of that was the Hopper model, because again, it's so rooted in reality. So for people unfamiliar with that model, or maybe you haven't heard about it in a while, it's so elegant. You basically have this, peanut hopper or a bingo hopper full of things to do. And you turn the crank and you pull one out and you get a bunch of people together and you see who's the best at it. And you say, okay, Pat was number one in that. Boz was number 10. Everybody else falls in where they were. Throw that one away, pick out another one, do it again, see where everybody stacks up. And you keep doing that over and over and over and over again. And eventually you get to the point where you're like, man, it doesn't matter what you throw at Pat. He's in like the top 20% or 30% on average. It could be anything, but he always seems to be right there. It's like, man, clearly he has that quality that we're talking about where he's developed enough physicality that it lends itself generally well to anything he experiences. And that's what we're really trying to get at. So I think a better question is not like, what's the best way to test for fitness? Because I think that's it. Find a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of things to do, rank yourself against other people that are doing them, see how it nets out. Now, I think the better question is, can you legitimately do that in the course of like a singular competition or event? Meaning,
Sure, sure.
across 2 or 3 days, there is going to be a limit to what you can do. I think you can get a really good approximation. But if you truly want to get like crazy about that sort of thing, I think you got to take a much wider view and a much wider kind of aperture. I think it has to be measured across years. I think it has to be measured across way more activities than are reasonable for like a general competition mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think that's the more interesting case to be made is like, well, what's broad enough to say definitively, like, yeah, we got it. We got enough things and enough time and enough data on this person that like they are the fittest. Uh, and then you can get into kind of the subsidiary questions around that too. Is like, well, for how long? Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Like I look at a guy like Matt Bishel and I talk about this quite a bit. Lucas Zepeda. Shout out to Lucas Zepeda.
Mm-hmm.
You might not know this. We talk about him a little bit. He's a great dude. We've all known him for forever at this point. He might be one of the fittest people in history just because of his consistency. He's not going to turn any heads at the highest level of like CrossFit competition, but that dude has been so fit for so long at this point
100%.
and continues to just be like an animal that when you look at that 15, 17
That
years
body
worth
of
of
work.
output, yeah, it's ridiculous. So in that context, I'm like, yeah, man, he's got to be up there.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's not going to
And
show in a weekend competition, but man, what are
I
we talking about?
also, this chasing metrics versus work capacity or task accomplishment, it was always very simple and clear in my mind when I was first, maybe one of the aha moments I had when I was first learning about CrossFit, maybe sitting in the stands at my level one or whatever it was. And, you listed out the classic ones that people chase, whether it's whatever, we'll stick with VO2 max for a second. But Greg would ask some sort of question that I might butcher a little bit, but he would say, would you trade one for the other?
Mm,
Would you trade an increase in your VO2 max for a decrease in your work capacity? And after understanding what work capacity is, I'm like,
sure.
that's a terrible trade-off. Like what would you be willing to trade for a decrease in work
Yep.
capacity? It's like, no. Like whatever it is, I want more work capacity. Like, that's what I want to chase. That's what I want to focus on. That's what I want to pursue. And it's like, yep, and that is task accomplishment. So I think that also just helps in my mind highlight why keep your eye on the prize. In my mind, that's a prize. And also it's probably makes for the most exciting competition as well, like visually
Sure.
interesting. Like you want to
Yeah.
see somebody accomplish the task, not just stop because they hit their required number of joules or whatever it happened to be. Like,
Yep.
if we're running up 10 flights of stairs with a fire hose in full gear, I want to see who gets up there first. Like,
Yeah, for
period in the
sure.
story.
Well, and I mean, that's the argument with any sport, right? Is that at the end of the day, you can look at any competitive endeavor and there will be a body type that starts to emerge that is best suited for whatever that task is. And like powerlifting is a great example. If you have an athlete that has, the anthropometrics that suit the lift that they're trying to do, they have an advantage. Now, people will talk about that. You can kind of speculate as to how much, but you're never going to determine the results of a powerlifting meet by taking a look at like absolute force production and saying, well, this shorter guy with smaller levers, he lifted more, but technically his output was less, and therefore he gets a silver medal instead of a gold.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's satisfied with it. They want to see, well, how much weight was on the bar and who lifted it? And if there was more weight on the bar and you lifted it, then you win. Your anthropometry, I think I butchered that
I
word.
love that. It was
Uh,
good.
it doesn't matter so much insofar as like, yeah, the people that have an advantage in that are going to be drawn to that sport. But once you're engaged in that sport with other people, it's like the absolute result is more important than those metrics that you could dig into. So yeah, and you'll see that emerge for any sport. There will be certain body types that are generally better suited to it for whatever reason. And I don't think that that means there's a limit or a lack of integrity with how things are contested, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
for sure. There's a really good chance that I'm going to be uh, fitter, faster, and stronger than most of these regular humans I'm going to go play pickleball against. But that, my friends, is not going to dictate the outcome of the pickleball match. It's going to be the score.
It'll
There's
help.
going
It'll
to
be
be
a great place to
score,
start, but
strategy. I'll be less fatigued and acutely aware that I'm losing.
yeah.
Is exactly how that's going to call it. The mental clarity to know how badly I'm being beaten. Um,
Yep.
but no, yep, for me, old school task accomplishment, work capacity.
Yep.
And yeah, I think and that actually, I think, is quite a testament, right? I mean, because how long ago did
Yeah.
Greg come up with that? And to this day, I couldn't try to kick it around and do something better. I think that it just stands the test of time.
Yeah. And like I said, these types of questions are fun. I think they're really interesting to think about. And But at the end of the day, I think you strip it all away and you're like, yeah, who can do the most stuff? The
100%.
most
So,
stuff in a single event, or a single competition, the most stuff across a month's worth of training, the most stuff across the span of a decade, etc. And not to be confused with most volume. That's not necessarily what I'm at either. But in the realm of things to do, who's got their bases covered to the best degree? That's what it comes down to.
anything else on it?
No, I don't think so. I just think that yeah, I would highly encourage people, if they haven't read that article, What is Fitness, in a while, it is worth
Yeah.
dusting off in a reread. I try to get back to that every year or so, because for me, going back, many years at this point, that was really a catalyzing moment where I was like, well, this is it.
Oh,
Because at
yeah.
that point in my life, I was really interested in all of these different kind of niche fitness. And the internet was a lot younger back then. There weren't as many kind of people doing kind of fringe fitness things, but each one of them kind of had a take on whatever it was that they were doing, and they had some great things to say. The kettlebell guys had some great things to say, the powerlifting crew had some great things to say, but there was no kind of unifying idea until I read that What is Fitness article, and I was like, oh man, this is it. This is what ties all of these things together and really makes a point for the breadth of general physical preparation that's possible. Even though we hadn't seen it yet, we hadn't seen these like super CrossFitters emerge at that point. It was too new, but the idea of it was so powerful, and I think it still resonates today. So that's my kind of rant to people that haven't been exposed to that material or haven't picked it up in a little while: is go back, because I still find it just as inspiring today to go back and read some of those old articles. So check them out.
They stand the test of time. Yes, and
Yeah.
I'm sorry whoever submitted this question, your name got cut off, so I couldn't give you a shout out. But maybe let us know there in the comments. And sorry about that. But if you've out there watching, listening the show, you've got an idea for a topic for us to kick around, or guests that we should have on, or whatnot, find the show on the BTWB YouTube channel. Post your thoughts and comments there. We read those. You can also do that on the Varied Not Random Instagram account, either to leave just a message on a post any day that happens, or you could send a direct message to the Varied Not Random Instagram account if you want to be a bit more discreet. They all make their way to us and they help drive the show. So for Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we'll see you next time.